Hi, I'm Jack Justice, Managing Partner at Ramblin' Jackson, a social media agency based in Boulder, Colorado. I've worked with Hugh Liddle for the last 3 years, and he's significantly increased my sales and income. At this presentation, you're going to learn how to sell to all kinds of people, regardless of their personality style. And at the end of the video, you're going to learn more about how you can increase your sales and schedule a meeting with Hugh. I hope you enjoy it.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening. We're so glad you're here, and we want you to know that since we got started a few minutes late, we're planning to refund your entire purchase price this evening. What I'd like to talk about tonight is personality styles, and especially as it relates to sales. And I have a question for you, first of all. How many of you in the audience tonight have somebody in your life that just absolutely drives you nuts? Raise your hand. I think every hand went up. Keep your hands up for just a second, because I've got another question. Now, I want you to put your hands down if you did not think of a family member when I asked that question. Okay, there are a couple of you who have family members out there who drive you nuts. And so there's a reason for that. And the reason for that is that there are 4 different personality styles or social styles that we encounter when we interact with people. And we're only usually 1 or 2 of those social styles. And we have a social style that's our opposite. And we'll talk a little bit about that. We'll talk about what we need to do when we're selling products and services if we want to really relate to and sell successfully to people who are styles that are different from ours, or maybe even our opposite styles. And so the first thing that I want you to know is that as we talk about social styles, and I'm using the term personality styles and social styles tonight interchangeably. Really what we're going to talk about is social styles, but the way that it usually is described is as personality styles. And so social styles are usually set in childhood. We chose what our style was going to be because we found out very early on what got us what we needed. And if that was to be in people's faces and yell and scream, and it worked, then that's usually the style that we stay with. If it was by being the class clown, then that's the style we stayed with. If it was by being mom and dad's perfect child and following all the rules and doing everything right, and that worked and got us the attention that we needed, then that's the one that we stick with as we become adults. And if we were just really nice and didn't make any waves and just got along with everybody and we found out that that worked, that's the style that we stay with. Social style is really not personality, because our personalities are made up of things like goals and dreams and ethics and morals and attitudes and things that aren't really visible. What we're really going to talk about tonight are social styles, and social styles can be measured. If I were to take a notebook and follow you around for a couple of days and made notes about every interaction that you had with other people, it wouldn't even take me a couple of days. It'd probably take me a couple of hours to figure out what social style or combination of social styles you really are. And so I want us to really be aware of the platinum rule. Now, you all know what the golden rule is, right? Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. But what we're going to talk about tonight is the platinum rule. And the platinum rule is do unto others as they would be done unto according to their style. In other words, treat them and interact with them and work with them in the way that they want to be worked with and dealt with, and not the way that you would want somebody else to treat you. You can recognize social styles very, very easily and very, very quickly just by knowing a couple of the basics. And so those lines, though, are continuums. They can go as far up and down or sideways as you want them to. And think about plotting a graph with those lines. Now, the further you go toward the top of the page, the more task-oriented a person is. The further you go toward the bottom of the page, the more relationship-oriented someone is. And so we've all encountered people who are task-oriented, haven't we? I had a boss one time that when he hit the front door, on the way back to his office, he had to pass everybody's desk, and by the time he got to his office in the back of the complex, everybody in the office thought that he was mad at them or they were mad at him, because he wasn't concerned about building relationships. He was concerned about the 25 things he had on his list of things to do. Well, he and I learned about social styles together. And it was really funny because he would come in the office and he'd start to walk back by my office, which was the first door on the left when you came in the office. And I'd see him and he'd start to walk by, and all of a sudden he'd catch himself and he'd stick his head in my door and he'd say, "Hugh, how you doing? How's your family? Everything going okay?" And I'd say, "Let's do 3 things on your list and then I'll tell you." And so we kind of took care of each other, and we did relate to each other in the way that the other person needed to be related to. And so sideways on the graph, over on the left-hand side of the graph, are people who are more introverted. They like to move slowly, they like to make decisions slowly, they build relationships more slowly. Over on the right-hand side of the graph are people who are extroverted. And they like to move quickly, they like to talk quickly, they like to have fun, and they're very, very outgoing. People who are on the way far left of the graph, probably not best to give them a hug, unless maybe you're married to them or you're part of the family or you're really good friends for a long time. People over on the right-hand side of the graph, hey, you can give them a hug anytime, and they're just fine with that. And so even if you're just meeting somebody for the first time, just by the way that they shake hands, just by their eye contact, just by whether they smile at you or not, whether they look at you or not, if they walk in and they say, "Hey, Hugh, how you doing today?" You know that you have somebody that's extroverted, right? And if they care about how you're doing, they're probably on the relationship orientation part of the graph, so you can just very quickly place them and have an idea of how you can relate with them successfully. And so I want to start off in talking about the 4 styles by talking about the people up in the right-hand corner of the graph. These are people who are task-oriented, and they also like to move very quickly. They're very extroverted, and we're going to call these folks drivers. Now, drivers are very interesting people. I am married to somebody who is very, very strong in this style, and I am not. And by the way, did you know that we tend to like people who are different from us, and we tend to marry people who are our exact opposite? I did. And that's a pretty good thing if you understand what their style is and how to relate to them, because every car needs an accelerator and a brake to operate properly. Is that not true? Yep. And it's the same way in relationships. If you understand how social styles work and you understand how to relate to each other, then you can get along with each other and you're stronger together than either one of you are separately. Now, if you don't understand social styles, and it's very easy to sit there and say, "What's wrong with them? Why aren't they more like me? I don't understand that. There must be something wrong with them." And we can wind up exchanging each other rather than relating to each other when that happens. So drivers are very interesting folks. Drivers, their motto is win, baby, just win. Al Davis, the Oakland Raiders, is a perfect example of that. And drivers, they need to be in control. They have to control the situation. Sometimes they even try to control people, and sometimes that gets them into trouble. If they feel like they're not in control, that control is starting to slip, they will become very assertive, very aggressive, sometimes yell at you until they feel like they're back in control again. And so that's one of the potential weaknesses of that particular style. They are very, very strong personalities, and because of that, and because their mates tend to be their opposites and not tremendously strong personalities sometimes, they can have a tendency to run over people because their personalities are so strong. They're very, very goal-oriented. Goals are tremendously important to people who are drivers. They're very, very focused. They have the ability to just laser focus in on one thing that they're doing, and they don't notice anything else that's going on or anyone else that's going on. And they're often accused of being rude or unfeeling or, not having social skills because they don't, if they're focused on a task and you interrupt them, you're likely to get yelled at instead of them paying attention to you. And so they're focused in on that task, and that's one of the things that we have to remember, that their goals and their tasks are tremendously important. They are wonderful decision makers. If you're selling to somebody who's a driver, you don't have to worry about whether they're going to buy at the end or not, or whether they're going to tell you whether they're going to buy. They'll let you know, hey, I really like this, or hey, this stinks, I don't want to do it. And they'll say it just about that way too. They can sometimes be very, very blunt. Drivers are tremendous leaders, and in a group situation, it is the driver in the group who will step forward and say, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to set a goal, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do it by this time, and I want you to take care of this, and I want you to take care of this part of it. You take care of this part of it, and I want you all to report back to me by Wednesday. And so it's easy to identify a driver in a group. Now, if you have a group that's trying to do a project and you have 2 drivers in the group, there will be a lot of this before the group finally figures out what they're going to be doing, because the drivers will vie for control. Drivers are outspoken. That's one of the coolest things about drivers, is that you never have to worry about what they're thinking, because they'll tell you. And sometimes they don't tell you nicely, but they'll tell you, so you know what they're thinking. They will tell you. Drivers want the bottom line. And sometimes if you're selling, if you're talking to them too much and you're not getting to the point, they'll tell you, hey, come on, give me the bottom line. Let's cut to the chase. What's the deal here? Tell me, because I got stuff to do. I got to get out of here. And so those are drivers. Now, drivers have tremendous strengths, and we just talked about them. Their weaknesses are their overextensions of their strengths. And so drivers, because they do have very strong personalities, and because they do tend to get fairly abrasive if they feel like they're losing control, they can be very, very overbearing. And that's a weakness. Sometimes they can be very, very impatient, and especially if they feel like they're not on track to meet their goals, or if somebody interrupts them when they're trying to focus. Boy, it just drives them nuts, and they will let you know right away that that's not cool. Another weakness of drivers is that because they tend to micromanage a little bit, and because they tend to start all kinds of different projects, and they've got all these things that they want to do, sometimes they get overwhelmed with all of it. And they're like the juggler that has 5 balls up in the air, and boy, this is getting really hard, and I'm not enjoying this, and it's not fun, and it's not going as fast as I want it to, and I'm not making some of my goals. Instead of just letting one ball drop and keeping the other 4 going, they'll let all 5 of them drop and walk away and say, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm going to start over again, and I'll try something else and do a new project. And sometimes, even if they fulfill their goal, even if they get that done, they're really unfulfilled personally by that. It's almost like, is that all there is? I did all of this work and I achieved this great success, and I just thought it would be a bigger deal than it is. And so those are some of the weaknesses. Their needs, once again, are to control, to reach their goals, and to move really, really fast. And so when we are selling to a driver, there are some things that we need to do. First of all, we need to talk faster. Since I moved down to Florida a couple of months ago, I'm having a tendency to talk slower and talk a little bit more like this because I have some background with Southern accent, and so when I get around people who speak with Southern accents a lot, I just slip right into it. But when you're talking to a driver, you have to move quickly. You have to go fast. You have to let them know what's going on. My suggestion would be that you bullet point your sales presentation. And don't go into a whole lot of detail unless they ask you for some detail. Just give them the broad stroke. My product or service will do this, and it will do this, and it will do this. And what that means to you is that you can reach your goals more quickly, and you can be in control of the situation because you take advantage of my product or service. And then ask them to buy, and they'll tell you whether they want to do it or not, because they can make decisions very, very easily. If you drone on and you try to give them all this information about all of this different stuff, a driver will turn you right off. They'll say, hey, I got to go. See you later. And they're out of there. So that is the driver. Now we're going to talk about the folks who are up in the left-hand quadrant. And these are people who are also task-oriented, but as far as the way that they like to move in the world, they move much more slowly. They make decisions more slowly. They really like to research and find out what's going on before they take action and do anything. With analyticals, it's data, baby. And the more data, the better. Inundate me with all the charts and graphs and research and all of the things that there really is to know about this subject that you're talking to me about. Analyticals are very, very precise, and they want you to be precise too. They want you to give them the straight facts and nothing but the facts, and those facts need to be right. They're very cautious. They move slowly because analyticals have a need to be right. And if they're not right, if they do something wrong, if they plan something wrong, if a project that they do doesn't go the way that it should, or if the outcome isn't perfect, they're not at all happy. And so being right is very important, and that's why they are so cautious. And that's why they'll take some time to make up their minds. They're very detailed, and they want you to give them every piece of detail that you can about what you're selling. They're very, very thoughtful people. They like to consider things before they make decisions. They make great leaders, but they will not step up and say, hey, I want to be the leader. You have to press them into service and say, hey, we want you to be the leader of this particular thing. And if you do that and they decide that they'll accept that leadership role, they're tremendous at it. They're really, really good. They are planners, and they don't do anything without making detailed plans. They're researchers. The Analyticals Bible is Consumer Reports, and if they're going to buy a toaster, they will find all the back issues of Consumer Reports that has anything to do with toasters, and they'll compare them, they'll figure out what the best toaster is, what's going to last the longest, what's the safest, what's the least expensive, and then they're still going to have a hard time buying the toaster. Maybe 6 months later, they'll go out and get a toaster if they've finally settled on the one that they think is the best. Analyticals are very insightful. My wife also has a good-sized chunk of this. She's a combination of two styles. And sometimes I have a tendency to trust people and get into various business relationships with people that are sometimes ill-advised. And I learned early on to listen to her when she said, there's something wrong. I don't think you should go forward with this. You better be careful. And every time that she said that and I've gone forward anyway, I've gotten burned. Every single time. And she's just great at that. So the weaknesses of analyticals are, again, overextensions of the strengths. Because that's a really cool thing, to be able to really analyze things and make great decisions and have things come out the right way. That's a good thing. But analyticals sometimes have a really tough time making decisions and taking action. And so things that they should do to have success, they sometimes don't do until way after the fact. They also tend to overanalyze and spend too much time trying to figure out the nuances when they're making a decision. And they tend to be very shy, and they tend to be very perfectionistic. The analytical is the one, when you shake hands with them, they probably will not make eye contact with you. And it's not because they don't like you, they're just shy folks. Now, that's the first half of the social styles. Do you guys know anybody out there that fits those descriptions? Anybody in your life that is that or are those styles? Okay, so let's talk about how to sell the analytical. First of all, with the analytical, you have to slow down. You're going to have to give them a lot of information and a lot of data when you're talking with them, and so don't try to go too fast. Slow the pace down. Ask them as you're going along if they have questions, or if you're making yourself clear as you're explaining your product or service. Don't try to rush it. In fact, when you're making an appointment with somebody who's an analytical, don't make the appointment for 20 minutes or half an hour. It's not going to be enough time. Make it for an hour or an hour and a half. Just plan on spending lots of time with them, and analyticals are going to ask you 1,000 questions. You think they're finished asking questions? They're not finished asking questions yet. So just plan out plenty of time to deal with that. Answer their questions thoroughly. And here's a really important thing, guys, if you're working with somebody who's analytical. If they ask you a question and you are not 100% absolutely sure of the answer to that question, don't try to fake it. Because if you do, they will go home and get on their computer and check. And if you give them the wrong information, if you tell them something wrong and they find out, they're not going to work with you. Because their need is to be right, and they're just going to assume, they gave me the wrong information this time, they're going to give me the wrong information again. What they're talking about isn't going to work because they gave me the wrong information. And so instead of doing that, say, you know, that is a great question, and I'm not 100% sure of the answer to it. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to research that for you, and I'll get the answer back to you. And if you are going to research it for an analytical, oh, they love that. That's the best thing that you can say. And explain why your product or service is the right decision, why it's the right thing for them to do. Use that in your vocabulary when you're selling to somebody who's analytical. Well, moving right along, we're going to talk about my very favorite style. It's my favorite style because I is one, always have been one. And that's the expressive style. Expressives are extroverted, and they also are relationship oriented. Expressives, their motto is, yippee, baby! Yeah, let's have a party, let's talk, let's have some fun. That's what expressives are about. They like to be popular, and interestingly enough, that is their greatest need, to be liked. And if you don't like them, they can't figure out why, and it just hurts them to the core that you don't like them. And so they like to be the life of the party. They like to be the center of attention. They like for people to notice them and pay attention to them. And they love to be around people, and they just love to have a great time. Expressives, rather, love to move quickly. And if you're selling to somebody who's expressive, you have to make sure that you keep things moving along, and that you keep it fun, and that you keep it fresh. Watch their eyes. If you lose eye contact with somebody that's expressive, it's like, oh, there's a dog over there. Oh, look at the ceiling up. Oh, look over there, pretty girl. And you've lost them. You know, they're not going to pay attention to a word you say until you get them back. And by doing a couple of very simple things, you can get them back again. Expressives are very, very impulsive. And I don't know whether you can read the t-shirt or not, but it says, eating too much, impulse buying, driving too fast, the perfect day. Ah, yes, it truly is. And so very impulsive people. They go with their feelings. They make decisions on the spur of the moment. I had an expressive friend who for years and years, the way that he went on vacation, and this was back before they had all of the security and all of the lines at the airport and so on, he would literally drive down to the airport. He would go into the ticket counter of an airline just at random and look at what the next flight was that was going out, and he'd buy a ticket for that flight. He'd get on the airplane and go and check out that town and that area and find out what there was to do there and talk to the people and just hung out there. And that was his way of taking a vacation. Tremendously impulsive, kind of tremendously fun too. Expressives are visionaries. Expressives can see the big picture. They're the people on your team that you want to include when you're talking about the goals that you want to set for the next 5 years and what your company actually can evolve into and all of the things that can be, all of the potential that's out there. They're very, very good at seeing all of those things. Expressives are very, very positive people. They tend to see the glass as all the way full, all the time. It's never ever half full or half empty. It's always all the way full. And they are very persuasive folks. They like to talk to people. They like to influence people. They like to bring people around to their way of thinking. They're good talkers, love to talk. And they like people, and they avoid isolation. You know, I have heard tell, and I think I've met some people like this, their idea of a great vacation is to go up in some little mountain cabin that's totally isolated and away from everybody and everything and just sit there for a week and enjoy all of the peace and quiet and go out and look at the trees and the stars and the sky. Holy moly, I'd be up the wall in about 5 minutes. You know, I want people to talk to and things to do, and you know, I want to be involved in things and not to be isolated. I want to be around folks. And expressives really like the finer things in life, and this is going to come as a real surprise to you folks. Expressives like to dress in bright colors because they like for people to notice them. And so they have trucks with bright red stuff on them that's visible from outer space, and they wear red hats. And people notice them, and it's really a great thing. The weaknesses of expressives are, again, overextensions of the strengths. The first weakness is procrastination. A deadline for someone who is expressive is when you start the project, not when you finish it. As I was going through junior high and high school and college, I wrote all of the papers that I had to write the night before or the day of the due date for that. Now, I carried the ideas around in my head and I thought about them, but I didn't actually get around to the writing of them until the very, very last moment. And sometimes I even had to go to the professor and say, you know, I'm having trouble with my typewriter, so if you could possibly, give me an extra day, I'd really appreciate that. And sometimes they did. So selling to somebody who's an expressive, I want to talk about one more weakness first before I do this. One more weakness is that because they are so persuasive and they talk so well, if they get under pressure and you confront them about it, they will tell you the most wonderfully outlandish stories and give you the most tremendous excuses for why they did what they did or why they didn't do what they were supposed to do that you've ever heard in your entire life. And the best example of this is if you remember Bill Cosby's old routine about his brother Russell, and they're bouncing on the bed and the bed breaks, and Dad comes in and says, all right, what's going on in here? Somebody's in trouble. Dad, there was this guy outside the window, and he came in here and he bounced on the bed and he broke the bed, and then he ran out the window laughing. And the dad says, now, are you telling me the truth? Yeah, Dad, we're telling you. You know what happens to little boys who don't tell the truth. Yeah, Dad, we know what happens to little boys. They go down to the bad place. Yeah, we don't want to go there. Okay, so tell me what really happened. Honest, Dad, really, this man was out there and he came in and bounced on the bed and broke it and ran out laughing. And so that's what expressive people have a tendency to do unless they have matured in their styles. And these weaknesses that we're talking about are weaknesses that each one of the styles can improve on, and they can really mature in their style, and they can maximize the great strengths that they have, and they can minimize the weaknesses of those styles. And that's what I call maturing in their style. And that's what certainly all of us want to do so that we can be successful in our lives and successful in business. So I want to talk about the last quadrant, and that these folks are the amiables in life. Wonderful, wonderful style. Their motto is, take it easy, baby. Just take it easy. They're very, very friendly people. And they do enjoy friendships. They enjoy interacting with people. They are very relationship oriented, but they move a little more slowly. An expressive person is your friend the minute you walk in the door. Unless you give them some reason to really hate you, you're good buddies. That's just the way it is. Amiables go a lot slower, and it takes time to gain their trust, and it takes time to build a relationship with somebody who's amiable. Very, very relationship oriented. They make great friends. They're just the best friends in the entire world. If you need somebody to talk to, go talk to somebody who's an amiable, because they will listen to you. They won't give you a hard time if you've done something that's kind of dumb. They'll just listen to you. They'll support you. They'll love you. They're just marvelous. They're extremely loyal, wonderfully loyal people. If you have an amiable for a friend, you've got a friend for life. And they talk nice about you even when you're not there. It's a really wonderful thing. And they won't even let anybody else talk bad about you either. And so just some wonderful folks. They're very loving, very caring people, and they're easygoing. They don't like to rush. They don't like to be tense. They don't want to have a whole lot of pressure. They just want to kind of take it easy and move very, very easily through life. Very family-oriented people. They love their families. They want to be close to their families. They don't want their kids to move away from home too far. And you've probably all know families where the entire nuclear family lives within about 2 square miles. They all have farms that are in the same place, or they all live in the same town. And they're very, very peaceful people. An amiable would rather eat a good-sized bug than to have a confrontation with anybody about anything. They just don't like to argue. They don't like to fight. Don't even really like to have discussions. Now, this also is a big piece of my social style, and so I can tell you that when my wife says, we need to talk, oh no, we need to talk. What do we need to talk about? Oh no, I'm probably in trouble, because I don't really like to have confrontations. Now, there is one exception to that. You can do or say a lot of different things to somebody who's amiable, and they'll just love you anyway. They won't take it personally. Don't mess with their family, because if you mess with their family, you have got a tiger by the tail. They'll come out of the corner fighting, and you'll be really, really sorry that you ever did anything bad to their family or said anything bad about their family. Now, they can criticize their family, and that's okay. But don't join in. Let me give you that piece of advice. Just let them say whatever they need to say, and let that be the end of it, and let it be okay. Amiable's weaknesses. Because they are so family-oriented, they tend to be very tied to family. I have a good friend who lives out in Reno, Nevada. And the economy out there is worse than it is here. It's even worse than it is in Florida. Very high-priced goods and services out there, and the wages are absolutely terrible. And this friend of mine is struggling financially, and I keep trying to get him to move to Colorado or even Florida or someplace where the economy is just a little bit better than it is in Reno, Nevada. And his wife's mother lives in Reno and will never leave Reno, doesn't want to live anyplace else. And as long as she doesn't want to leave, the wife won't leave. And as long as the wife won't leave, the husband's not going to leave either, obviously. And so that family is being hurt financially because there's an overdependence on family. And they need to break away from that. They need to mature enough that they can say, Mom, we're going someplace else. We'd love for you to come if you'd like to, but we're moving, we're leaving. They need to make that decision, and they won't do it because they haven't matured to that point yet. Sometimes amiables are also very indecisive, and sometimes they find it very, very hard to build trust. And that's why you have to take some time building a relationship with somebody who's amiable. They have to feel that they know you, that they like you, that you're having a relationship with each other, and that you're trustworthy, and that they can be really safe and secure, because that is their greatest need, is to be safe. Trust and loyalty are also very, very important. I told you that they're very, very loyal people. You know what, though? They expect the same from you. And now I'm going to tell you the worst things that you can say to each one of those styles. The worst thing that you can say to a driver is, boy, you sure did a lousy job on that. Oh, not a good thing. The worst thing you can say to an analytical is, you were wrong. That'll drive them nuts. The worst thing that you can say to an expressive is, I don't like you. And the worst thing that you can say to somebody who's amiable is, I lied to you. Don't ever lie to anybody, but especially if they're amiable. Boy, don't tell them a whopper, because that trust and loyalty is so important to them. They just have to have that. They need to have that. And they will drop you like a hot potato. If they come to the point where they can't trust you anymore, then that's it. It's over with. When you're selling to somebody who's amiable, you also need to talk slower, but you don't have to give them a whole lot of data about your product or service or what you're doing. You don't have to give them all the research and the charts and graphs. You just need to spend some time building relationship with them. You need to explain how your product or service will help their family, or even how it will help society as a whole. Because amiables are team players, and they want to be of service, and they want to really help people. And so if you can tell them how your product or service will help them, help their family, or help society as a whole, help other people, they're on board. Explain why it's safe. Explain why it's going to be okay to make a decision and do business with you. So those are the social styles, and that's how you sell to them: drivers, analyticals, expressives, and amiables. And I want all of us to remember, as we leave tonight, the platinum rule. Don't do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Do unto others as they would be done unto, according to their style. And it'll be a better world out there, and you'll have a whole lot more fun. I promise.
To arrange a one-on-one group coaching or to buy Hugh's book, visit redcapsalescoaching.com.